Boom.
Hey, we're live. What's up? The Reflection. What's going on, John?
Not a whole lot, Beats. Just reflecting on some stuff. See what I did there?
Oh, that was a nice play on words, buddy. It looks like you went to your English class today.
Yeah, I did. I went to English class, literature, recess. Went to the prom with your mom. A couple different things. So great episode today. We're going to be talking about qualified immunity. That's cool because, not even a lot of people really know what qualified immunity means. We kind of use it as a bit of a blanket term, really, because it not only talks about the dictionary definition of qualified immunity, which is like civil liability of police officers, but we use it as a branching term for many different ideologies, which is essentially all boiling down to preferential treatment to law enforcement officers who are involved in some sort of situation like this.
You already know how I feel about this, bro. You already know. You already know. That's all I'm going to say right there. We've had some pretty interesting, slightly heated discussions about qualified immunity.
I think that a lot of different people have a lot of different ideas on how the system could be improved and how the system is implemented.
There doesn't need to be qualified immunity, period. There's no, hey, what's up, Toby?
Hey, Toby. Thanks for joining us tonight, brother.
There's no need for qualified immunity, period, bro. Hands down. That's the end of the conversation right there. Our show's over.
Okay, show's not over because unfortunately, even though I advocate for legal reform and I want to see some changes to qualified immunity, there is a very good reason for the actual basis of qualified immunity, which is essentially this. Police officers will sometimes go into situations in which their job forces them to do things that normally we would not be okay with. Like, for instance, we're not talking about just about police shootings as far as fatalities, but let's talk about police shootings when they're trying to stop an actual criminal when they're trying to run away. I'm not sure who you are, but you're beautiful. Thank you for joining us tonight. So you got to find the original announcement for the show, and then you click on that, and you'll grant StreamYard permission to be able to read what your Facebook name is, and then that way it'll pop up on our screen. That way we can tell who we're talking to. But thank you for joining us today. Oh, here's Mimi.
Mimi, I know you're gonna weigh in big time. You are.
But let's look at it this way: like in a normal altercation, right? If we look at security guards at stores, for instance, someone's trying to steal something and they're trying to run out the door. Okay, most stores no longer allow their security guards to pursue them because they incur a civil liability. So if they tackle them or drag them or even illegally detain them, then the entire company is liable. So qualified immunity allows officers to sometimes do things in intense situations without having to get a certain level of ramifications if it was in the normal course of their duties. That's not a bad system, man. It really isn't. I understand why we need it. You know what I mean? We're sending these people armed into people's houses. We're sending them after dangerous criminals. We're sending them in all these different situations. We have to give them some modicum of protection. But how far does that protection extend? How far does that immunity really go?
Okay, let me weigh in real quick, bro.
Sure.
Let me say my point, because I don't think qualified immunity should be a thing, period. I think that I know that you have a hard job. I get that. I know you got to make life-changing decisions and possibly kill somebody in the line of duty. However, the qualified immunity should come after the fact. I'm not saying get rid of it completely and altogether, but there needs to be, no matter if it's a clear-cut situation. Let's say you got a bank robber coming out of the bank, bag of money, gun, points a gun at an officer. Officer shoots him. There still needs to be that due diligence, that process of, all right, let's investigate this. Let's see what happened, because every shooting is investigated, whether it's justified or not. It's always going to be investigated. So let's keep that due process there and put it right in the beginning. Okay. Then we're like, all right, cool. you definitely are justified to shoot this person in this situation. Now you get qualified immunity. That's how it should be. Qualified immunity is a good thing, but it shouldn't be the immediate thing that the officer gets until pending investigation.
So would you agree that, and then in that case, what you're advocating for really is the ability to sue the officer for wrongful death after the investigation's done?
Oh yeah.
So that they can actually be liable on that. That does make a lot of sense.
Officers, I think officers should have to carry their own insurances, just like doctors should have to carry their own insurances. Because if a medical malpractice situation happens, what happens after that? Then the patient is able to sue the doctor, and who pays them? The doctor's insurance that he pays a premium for monthly or yearly or whatever. It should be the same thing for them. Firefighters should have it too. Ambulance should have it too, because it not only protects the person performing whatever they need to perform, but it also protects the person who it's getting performed on. You know what I mean? Like whatever it is.
But then doesn't that lead us to the problem is who's going to insure these cops? Who's going to insure a cop for a wrongful death possibility claim that is millions? You know what I mean? Like, this isn't exactly like smashing your house when you're removing a tree on accident or something like that. Wrongful death claims, we've seen them literally go into tens of millions of dollars. Now imagine how many police each year that are going to have to use that insurance, possibly pay out that liability. It's a tough road. But my question
I see where you're coming from. I see where you're coming from. I got it. You know what I'm saying? Like, who's going to insure, right? Who's going to insure big businesses? They got to have insurances. My brother by himself, because he does a business that he sells Kirby's, okay? And he's a distributor for Kirby. He has to have a $2.5 million liability insurance policy because he's going into people's houses. You see what I'm saying? That's just him, a small fry 1099 businessman. You know what I mean? So there's big business insurance all the time, dude. Like I don't see who's not gonna. That's where it comes down to the premium. You know what I mean? And who's gonna pay the premium? I get that, but it's something that needs to be put in place, bro. It's something. There needs to be some kind of insurance there. Maybe it's a government subsidized insurance. I don't know, but it has to be some kind of.
Did you know that Geico? Even the initials for Geico is Government Employee Insurance Company. They became so successful in the federal sector that they actually went kind of reverse privatized, so to speak, and opened it up to other people.
Okay, why can't that happen for cop insurance? And that can very well happen for cop insurance.
I'm not against that, but there's a way to, I think, diminish the liability on these insurance companies that, if we're talking about insuring these officers, is it translates to better vetting as far as these situations, like what qualifies you to be covered by the insurance. So like, I think that we do have a problem with paying all this stuff, but if we made the standards relatively on point or even, higher than your average deal, I think that will weed out a lot of those easy payouts. And I truly believe that if you implement any system that requires accountability, that says, look, you will be punished if you break this law. You will be punished if you use excessive force. You will be punished if you kick in somebody's door on an unlawful warrant. It's up to you to have that accountability. At first, that seems really cruel, but long term,
it's not cruel.
It's
not cruel. It's not.
You don't think it's cruel? You don't think it's cruel?
No. I think you're getting ready to say the point I want to touch on. In the long term, it's going to slow it down because you can go to jail. What happens when you get in a car accident and it's your fault? Your insurance premiums go up, 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 up. So it would be the same thing for cop insurance. You can either go to jail or you can get insurance so high that you can't even afford it. And guess what? You don't get to be a cop anymore. Do you see what I'm saying? So,
but do you see why people don't want that? Do you see how like people in areas where like there's less police already. Like there's not enough police already to cover their issue or whatever. Like
Okay.
suddenly they're like, okay, well, this is going to make it even harder for police. So why not wrap in some sort of beneficial legislation with that? So not only
Like
do your
what?
insurance, well, like not only do your insurance premiums go up necessarily, or you have these liabilities if you do anything that's illegal, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't do anything that's illegal, you get mandatory pay raises. You get guaranteed promotions.
There you go.
You get, you know, commemorate or what is it? Merits, you know what I mean? You actually get some sort of reward for that. So like rather than doing it where it's only a negative reinforcement, I think it's important to also bring in the positivity for that positive reinforcement. Like would you think that would be a good idea? I mean, as far as you go?
I can jump on board with that and be all over that. That makes sense. Because I mean, what do you do with kids? I know that's bringing it way, way, way down here, but what do? You get the negative reinforcement reinforced by the positive reinforcement. Like, dang it, Timmy. But I like you. You know what I mean? I love you. You did good. Having to carry that type of insurance for doctors is why they charge so much. First responders would have to make a lot more money. Okay. Yeah, that's true story. And I agree, Chuck. What I was really trying to do was just like kind of put a whole blanket thing out there, like maybe everybody has to get it. You know what I mean? But you know, I don't think a first responder now after reading your comment is gonna like want to hurt somebody or accidentally hurt somebody.
Well,
you know
first responders often when we use that term, it also includes police. But yeah, no.
I hear first responders and I hear ambulance.
You hear first responders and you hear get the hell out of Dodge, brother. Don't lie for these people.
Wow, John.
I'm just saying, man.
Hey,
from in the time I've been around you, you're real nervous around flashing lights.
John, I'll pull the card. I'll pull it.
Don't you pull no cards. This is the card-free show. No cards of any kind. And that's my white privilege. Anyways, let's look at a couple of
No, that is not. Black cards coming out. First of all, I need reparations.
How's it going, Steve? Thanks for joining us, man.
So didn't we have a
look, I'd be shot by an uninsured cop. You thought it was bad when they rear end you and they don't have insurance.
Hey, where's Mimi at? Where's Mimi? I know she's there. She's got
Mimi's all over the place. You want to see some Mimi?
Yeah, let's see some Mimi.
So we go, LOL, then right into split-second decision. Isn't an easy decision to make for any officer, especially now since officers are getting run through the mud.
That's true. That is true. If I was an officer right now in this day and age, I would be scared to go to work every single day, especially if I work in a big city.
Now, hold on a second. Hold on a second, Beats. I've been told by law enforcement advocates and a few Republicans that cops are always scared. And that's the reason they pull the triggers, because they're afraid for their life. So, like, to me, I believe respect is due. Okay. I respect the officers out there under the badge. I'm not gonna shortchange you. And let me just say this, man, anything I have to say about legal reform, it's not directed at police officers. It's directed at the system that doesn't reward the good ones and provides tons of leeway for the bad ones. Mm-hmm. Like, how many cops do we know that are underpaid? Pretty much all of them, right?
Yeah, it's really not that great of a salary, honestly.
And we've heard stories from people where cops that speak out against other cops, or cops that do everything by the policy or whatever else, they don't raise in rank. They don't rise in rank. Right. They don't get to be command staff. You know, they kind of stay in that area.
That's that fraternal brotherhood, bro. And that fraternal brotherhood. Yeah. It's not a bad idea. I don't disagree with it because, I mean, it helps morale. You know what I mean? Like with any situation, whether it's police or a gang, you know what I mean? Or a group of people like Breathe America. We have a fraternal brotherhood. How do we manage it though? We play nice with each other. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
that was
Sometimes.
a slight caveat in there, guys. I know we don't play that nice.
Look, if you people wanted an echo chamber, you know where you can find those shows. Not here.
But yeah,
That's a good point right here. Read this, Beats.
what? It would help if people would. True story, man. I hate that. Oh my God. Thank you, Chuck. Teddy, thank you. Yeah, that's your nickname, Chuck, because your last name's Pendergrass. Nickname's Teddy. But yes, I see a lot of videos where you can tell somebody's setting the officer up, bro. And I love it when the officer's like, not gonna get me there, buddy. That pisses me off, man. That's perpetuating the cycle, big time. You're making a scene for nothing, dude. Like literally nothing.
All right. Beats, do you want to tell these people who we have as guests backstage right now?
Actually, yeah, that's a pretty guy. Actually, I said something about 5 minutes ago, but you kept talking.
I say that all the time.
Today we got a very special guest, my best friend, my best man in my wedding. His name is Adam Blankenship. He is a retired military police officer. And I know that's not really the same as a city cop or a regular street cop or anything, but I think he's going to have some good points to weigh in. So let's bring him on in, Mr. Adam.
Hello. How's it going?
Thank you for joining us, man.
What's up, John? What is up, Aaron?
What's popping? I don't know what that was, but I like it. That was pointing to I don't know.
Happy to be here.
So you actually you served as a military police officer, an MP. First off, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. America is indebted to you, and all the people like you. Everybody's put on that uniform as a hero in my book. And just as a record, I don't think the boys in green need any more restrictions or legislations or codes of conduct as far as rules of engagement. They're pretty damn well regulated.
They are. They definitely are.
So I wanted to ask you, do you identify as a police?
Yes. Yes, I do. Yes and no. I mean, I identify as a police officer. I also identify as a veteran, and I also try to identify as somebody that uses common sense, because like when people like find out that I'm a police officer, they always like, or I was a police officer, they always want to ask me like, what would you do in this situation? Like, what would you do in that situation? Because there's always some kind of police issue coming up and everything. And so, and people ask my opinion, and like, sometimes I might weigh in depending on like how strongly the evidence is, but a lot of times like I'm just like, well, I don't want to sit there and like second guess the officer, because somebody brought it up earlier, like they have split second decisions to make. And yeah, sometimes they're going to be the wrong decision, but sometimes they're, you can't honestly know unless you're in that situation. I mean, there's so much gray area in policing. It's not black and white. It's definitely, you're more in the gray area when you're responding to something than you are in the black and white area. At least that's how I feel about it anyways.
I got a question to piggyback off of that. You mentioned the gray area of police work. How would you mitigate wading through the gray area in a situation? I know you just said I don't like answering these questions, but here I am asking you.
Okay.
But like, how would you?
What I'd like to try to do when I was a police officer, well, I like to use 90% my brain or talking, because most of the time you can resolve a situation by just talking to somebody, listening to what they have to say, maybe empathize with them a little bit, if you had to. And then 10% of the time, it doesn't matter what happens, you're going to go hands on, or or you might have to draw your weapon, or some other kind of some kind of other control that you might have to take. But I like to think that most of the time you can solve it by just using your brain.
Most powerful weapon, right? And that's what Patrick always tells us. We are not our mind. And I'm like, yes, but I really like my mind. Helps out a lot.
Yeah.
I may be a soul, but I didn't pack this thing full of books for nothing.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this. If you feel
Sure.
comfortable, have you ever had to discharge your weapon during your course of your duties?
In combat, yes. In police duties, I've had to draw my weapon one time when in the course of normal police duties, and that was because somebody was threatening to stab their significant other, and so.
Yeah, I can
But
imagine
luckily,
that.
luckily the situation got resolved without shots fired or anybody getting stabbed or anything like that. And so,
So Nicole wants to know what branch you were in.
I was in the Air Force.
Air Force MP. I don't know what their slogan is, but anchors away, Nicole.
Isn't it like Semper Fi?
No.
No, that's the Marines, bro. That's the Marines. Then no, the Air Force was like oh crap, I can't even remember right now, but like
I know what it is. I know
like,
what it is. I got it. I got it.
That was the old one. What is it?
I got it. It's Ghost Rider, the pattern's full.
Okay, I just want to apologize
about Navy Aviator.
I believe the newest motto is fly, fight, win. But
yes,
it's
been that's pretty much been that way ever since
aim high. That's what the people in the comment section are blowing up as. Aim high.
Yeah. Aim high.
Yeah, it was that for a long time.
Oh, aim high, fly, fight, win.
Yeah.
That's
I got that from an inside source, guys. Okay, I can't release my inside source, but I know that's pretty correct.
Yeah.
So, like, what are your thoughts on, like, I don't know what it's like for military police, but two questions, I guess. Does military police get qualified immunity, and what are your thoughts on qualified immunity?
I do believe, I'm pretty sure that the military police officers do get qualified immunity, but you're also subjected to the UCMJ, which is the Uniform Code of Military Justice, and sometimes that protects you more, but then also on other counts it could also hurt you more. So, but then we also had to learn the the whatever state we were in, or whatever city or county we were in. We also had to learn their rules as well, because there would be times that we'd have to pull over civilians on base, and so we also had to know those codes as well. And qualified immunity doesn't, I think, like John was saying earlier, it's a blanket term. It doesn't just apply to police officers. It also applies to public officials. So it could be firefighters, first responders. It could be a senator, a congressman. I mean, it's going to be used for different, in certain aspects, but
right.
Well, we got to remember the black and white definition that we see most frequently used is civil liability of those working in the basically the employ of the state during a state-run duty. So they consider in the municipal courts, police are working for the municipality, so therefore they're on that. But it does really encourage a broad spectrum of different jobs and everything else, all kind of having that tie-in.
Okay, and as far as that, how do I feel about qualified immunity? I do believe in qualified immunity, but not the way as it is currently, not the way that it's currently interpreted. I believe that there shouldn't be necessarily state laws. There should be federal laws that clearly outline qualified immunity, and also like when people would lose qualified immunity, and then everybody, not just everybody in the whole United States, should have to follow those federal laws. And then that way that would get people from getting off, from our officers from getting off from qualified immunity all the time. Because the contemporary version of qualified immunity was actually decided way back in 1982 by the Supreme Court by the case Harlow v. Fitzgerald. And they pretty much stated that a public official could lose the prosecution of the qualified immunity only when they have violated a clearly established statutory or constitutional rights. So it's already been basically clearly defined, but over the years there's been so many other state and federal cases that have they've went against what that ruling was, and then so now the waters are muddied. And if I could, I researched this, and I would like to bring up a case back in 2013 in Texas. A young man named by the name of Gabriel Windsor. He was a mentally impaired black man in Texas. He was shot 17 times, shot at 17 times. He got hit 4 times. He died at the scene. And why did the officer shoot him? Because they got a call that shots had been fired, but it wasn't even him. He was driving around the neighborhood on his bike with a toy gun, and there was some guy, another black man out there shooting mailboxes. So what happened to the officers? The court ruled that the police killing was unconstitutional, but the police were given qualified immunity. So why did they give them qualified immunity when it was ruled unconstitutional? I mean, the waters have been muddied so much that there needs to be new regulations and laws.
Well, not only that, but I'm a constitutionalist, okay? I believe in the personal liberty of each individual that is in this government. And how often do we see the Constitution protects us from the federal powers, right? And to a certain extent, it's supposed to also protect us against the state powers and the municipal, depending on how you read it. Well, most of our lawmakers have read it to believe that local governments can be more restrictive on your constitutional liberties than the federal government can. So they have the enforcement factor there. But what we see is that when we start talking about what is a constitutional violation or an unconstitutional violation, things get super sticky, because when it comes to law enforcement, the very act of law enforcement through most of its normal duties is in a way unconstitutional. Like, for instance, when they want to come on your property and search your house, or they want to come and talk to you and investigate you, or they want to bring you down for detention, even if they're not sure they're going to charge you. Now, if they do this in an excessive way or in a very blatant way, and the person they're doing it to has some sort of legal knowledge, then we can definitely see this constitutionality or this unconstitutionality be enforced. But what we often see is that they go, well, a certain amount of constitutional rights has to be thrown out so we can police people, because you have to be beholden to the police officer to be actually dealing with the police officer. So like when you're talking to, any of these things, whether it's traffic stops, tickets, arrest, how much they punish you. This is all something that had to be weighed against the Constitution. And unfortunately, the Constitution lost on a lot of these battles. They really did kind of favor into a more authoritarian idea of how we can conduct our liberties. In fact, as we know now, there's many states that don't require Miranda rights to be read to you prior to your actual getting stuffed in the car. Now, once you get to the jail, then they can give you a quick rundown of it. But here's the deal. prior to the arrest and prior to the actual booking are two different terms. And it's my understanding. Sorry, you were going to say something. Go ahead, buddy.
Well,
I'll be up here all
it just the not reading them the Miranda rights. I mean, that was like always the first thing we did before we put somebody in the car, because there is this thing, like, as long as you read somebody their Miranda rights and they understand them, there's this thing called an excited utterance. And like, if they're riding in the back of your patrol car and they start talking, and then you remind them like, hey man, I read you your rights and you understood them, right? And they're like, yeah, but they keep talking and they incriminate themselves, then, oh, well, they, you read them their rights and they said that they understood them. So that just baffles me. I read the Miranda rights before they put them in the back of the car.
You guys are bringing up a lot of great valid points with rights and constitutions and how that applies to state policing and all that other stuff like that. But and everything that you're saying makes sense. And I agree with everything that you guys are saying. You know what I mean? That's how it should be. But then we have situations like the no-knock warrant, Breonna Taylor situation. Who's going to speak up for that? You know what I mean? We got them, like you were telling me, John, we got them coming out making a statement talking about they're doubling their police force before they make an announcement. What do you think is going to happen in that situation? Why are you doubling your police force?
Did you hear the announcement?
What?
They're being charged.
They're being charged?
They're going to be charged for
what?
wanton endangerment. Wanton endangerment.
What is
okay?
Yeah. What does that even mean?
So like how we can get charged with reckless endangerment, right? This is, and since it's wanton endangerment in the first degree, it essentially means that there was an intention to disregard life, or at least disregard the possibility of life being killed.
I got one of my sources coming in here is saying that only one of them are being charged.
Only one officer is being charged. So that's the one that probably actually hit Breonna Taylor, I'm assuming.
Here's my potty word of the night. That is complete fucking bullshit. All of them should be charged. All of them. There should be those other guys should be charged with this lesser crime, but the person who shot her should be going to jail for murder, because it was straight up murder.
Manslaughter, maybe, but then.
How do you define murder, Beats?
Well,
here's the deal.
It's not
okay.
Murder one.
Let me ask you this.
It's not murder one. It's not murder one. However, it is a murder. It's negligent homicide.
Would you agree to say like involuntary manslaughter?
I say negligent homicide.
Glad you're not that judge. Just remember this, guys, and I'm going to play devil's advocate with this. When you go for a severe charge, it's very hard to make that charge stick. You have to really prove some serious stuff about this person's intention and what he did. Bro. Look at Derek Chauvin. Derek Chauvin right now, he's going up for murder charges, and prosecutors and defense both have said, we're really worried that this actually isn't going to lead to any kind of a conviction because of the stringent requirements to prove that it was absolutely premeditated murder, or it was murder in the first degree, or it was aggravated homicide, or whatever you want to say. That's why I'm actually happy about hearing wanton. Now I totally forgot the term.
Wanton
endangerment.
Yes, wanton endangerment, because now we've opened it up to this much broader term that may be easier to get justice. Now, I don't know particularly on this case what all the details are besides what we've seen on mainstream media. And as we know, we absolutely cannot trust anything that's on mainstream media. And I just want everybody to know, Fox News is mainstream media. Don't kid yourself. I just need that to be said. If you're dropping MSM bombs and talking about the censorship and the rampant slant and the bias, and then you drop like some Tucker Carlson in the contents,
get out of there! Get out of there!
You may have good points or whatever, but we're definitely talking mainstream. And if you don't believe me, look up Rupert Murdoch.
Hold on, guys. Hold on, guys. This must be because we're syndicated on 3 different platforms right now, but I'm getting another incoming source. I'm thinking, yeah, we're the charge we were talking about is a Class D felony, also BS, 1 to 5 years. That is not enough.
Are you
by
picking
any
that up
means.
from the Hong Kong broadcasts? Is that where you're getting that from?
No, I'm getting that from the little ball of chi with the lid. That's my source.
That kind of sounds
It's a
like
real-
Asia. All right, we're going to take a second here. We're going to actually bring on 2 guests that you have seen numerous times and cannot get enough of. And that is going to be Mr. Breathe America, Patrick Wickard, and Mr. I guess I'll call him Death to Corporatism and the greedy structure that destroys Americans every day in their lives. We'll call him that. Because,
Wow,
you know,
that's
he's a complex
really
dude.
long nickname.
He's a complex guy. I can't just be like, let's bring on
You're right.
both.
You're right. He is very complex.
So let's welcome everybody, Patrick Wickard and Mike Wilkinson. Pull these guys on here.
What's up,
Kablam!
everybody?
Hey. Hey, did you get a mic, Patrick?
Oh, he's had a mic.
Yeah, I've had a mic.
Oh, you've had a mic. I need to
Yeah,
step my
it's the only
game
one
up.
where you can see it. It normally sits over there, but I'm surrounded by coffee mugs and drinking containers, and hydrate, everybody. It's summertime. What a subject!
Let me just.
Yeah.
So
John
I
got
feel
me
like
to
I need
say
to drop a little bit.
You do.
Ooh, is that me?
Let's make
I don't
sure.
think it's
Hey
me.
guys, while we're doing this, let's make sure everybody mutes their mics. So if
Who's
you can reach
talking?
out and hit your mute on your mic real quick, while we'll start with Patty Wacker over here. He's getting ready to launch his.
Patty.
Gee, John, never heard that before. All right, so first things first, you guys were talking about it shouldn't be a murder charge, the way he was charged, and thought it was the person that actually, or the officer that actually shot Breonna Taylor. That is incorrect. It was the officer who was outside the building that shot blanketly in through apartment, whose bullets went through another wall, that endangered other people, who has been charged with this crime. As far as the grand jury hearing as of right now and what we have seen, the officers actually involved in the shooting and responding to the shots are not being charged at all at this particular point in time. And I know a lot of people have a lot of feelings about this situation, and this is a tough one. My position's pretty hard to explain, but it's not that complicated. These officers, now we can discuss the legality of the warrant that they had. We can discuss how they got it and all those kind of things. And those are conversations that we have to have. But as far as the officers responding that were in the apartment at that moment in time, they were fired upon. Breonna Taylor was caught in a crossfire, and it is a horrible thing. But those officers were fired upon. And you're telling, and like Beach, you said you wanted murder. That's first of all, they could never get that in a court based on the legal definitions of murder. They have the right to defend themselves too after being fired upon. So I think this charge for this officer is really the one charge that they thought they could get. But at the same time, what's that mean for the officers that returned fire? And what's that mean for the legality on the sides of the warrant and how they got the warrant and all those kind of things? There's a lot of questions here to be answered. And I don't necessarily know that I have all the answers to any of this. I don't think anybody really does. What we do know is a woman died, and she probably shouldn't be dead. She got caught in a crossfire, and that is a horrible situation. I'm just not sure. Go ahead. What?
So I'm just now learning today, 7:41 p.m. years old, that they were getting fired at. I had no idea that even happened. I thought they were going in on a no-knock warrant, and they shot her because that's the narrative.
That's a hotly contested fact, Beats. That's a hotly contested fact, because what we have is we have a stark difference between what the eyewitnesses on scene, the civilian eyewitnesses reported, and what the officers are uniformly saying. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to point this out. Sometimes civilians lie, sometimes cops lie.
It's very true.
Agree. But now we got to back up even further, because if they were being fired upon, they were going to somebody's house. Where were they at? What state are they in this situation?
They're in
Kentucky.
Louisville, Kentucky, I believe. Yeah.
Is that let's real quick. You have that's not a strict gun state, is it? Louisville, Kentucky.
Yeah. Well,
It's
it's a
not
bit,
strict
bit
gun
on the
state.
border of Indiana. No. Kentucky's not, as strict as some states are as far as their gun laws.
So if somebody come up in your house, you could shoot. Do they announce themselves as police officers? Like, do we know any of that story at all? Because now
So we
the
know
narrative for me is changing.
Here's the thing, is that we have conflicting stories on that. That's part of what he was speaking about, is that we have different stories from the civilians and from the officers. The officers say they announced themselves, ironically, on a no-knock warrant, and yet the civilians, including the neighbors, say that it didn't happen.
the officers also say that he fired first at them. The civilians say that that was not the case. They believe that police officers fired first and there was a single shot back about 3 or 4 shots in or whatever. That's the problem with this.
I'd like to make an observation about that. If you're a civilian and you're not in that apartment, how the hell do you know which gun fired first?
It probably sounds different.
Yeah,
but I
I'm
won't
gonna
debate that.
stand with Patrick on that one.
Here's what I do know, and what we do know from actual pictures. In the pictures taken at the crime scene and all of the witness accounts, at least one officer was wearing a body cam the entire time. Where's the footage?
Oh, you're not going to see
Why
that.
don't we have that?
That's a fact.
It's going to be for the
I guarantee you that'll never come to light. It'll never
We've
come to
already
light.
hit the point in time where they normally release this body cam footage. And we've also seen, let's point out that lately, what have we seen people do when there's a police shooting? The departments are rushing the videos to the public to prove that they did things exactly right, especially now in a time where the political climate is out of control. Do you believe that if that body cam footage, if it was even on, which we know is not a legal requirement everywhere, if that body cam footage showed them doing exactly the right thing, do you think they would have any reason to sit on it?
No, but here's the thing, and I'm responding to you and several comments that I'm seeing at the same time. So, yes, her boyfriend admitted he fired. He shot an officer in the leg. We know that. That is fact.
Yes.
I don't think it's contested that he fired first. What's contested is whether he was firing at what he knew was police officers or home intruders.
Now, I'd like to add a point to that. Whether they announced themselves or not, I personally have a huge issue with no-knock warrants, constitutionally speaking. I think they should absolutely do away with them. I think they're dangerous because as a gun owner, as somebody who carries all the time, if I hear a door getting kicked in my house, I'm coming out of my room armed, just saying. And like, I'm coming out shooting, and you're wanting me to make a decision in a split second as to who's in my house in the middle of the night. I'm going to make that decision to protect my family first, right? Like, that's what's going to happen. But here's the problem with the Breonna Taylor, this whole situation. If you listen to only the media on one side of this story, you're going to think that the cops need to be charged with murder, period. If you listen to the story on the other side, you're going to think that the cops did nothing wrong and they need to, and this is all a bunch of BS. So as somebody who speaks out often about the media and how they like to manipulate stories and change things around and spin a narrative, this is one of those perfect examples of how the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. There were, from what I understand, mistakes made. And I think the guy that they charge and what they charged him with is absolutely appropriate. He stood behind the apartment firing through a damn window with full metal jackets that went through the wall, through the next wall, and through the next wall.
Absolutely.
Right? Like putting other human beings in danger in that apartment complex. Now, do I think the cops need to be charged with murder? No, I don't. I don't,
think
because
so.
they were fired
Not in
upon
this
and they
situation.
returned fire. But I do think we need to look at the legal. If anything, what I hope comes from the Breonna Taylor case is that we do away with once and for all no knock warrants, period, forever. It is a ridiculously bad idea, and
I
it puts
think we also
at risk.
need to look into the legality of this one in specific, because there is a lot of data that correlates with this not being legally obtained. There's a lot of falsified information claims going on. There's a lot of people saying that the evidence that they used to obtain the warrant was falsified in some way, and that's backed up by one of their sources at the post office, who was part of the whole story of her being involved with her ex-boyfriend's drug trade. This supposedly, according to the people at the post office, they have no proof of this and was made up.
Yeah, Crystal, I think we absolutely can get to that point here in just a second. I would just like to add one other thing to that, Mike. Whoa, I moved.
Yes, you did.
Magic? Can you believe it? Magic?
That threw me off too.
There's a if this warrant was illegally obtained, if there is evidence of that, I 100% agree that needs to be looked at, and there needs to be charges filed, and we need to take that to the fullest extent of the law for whoever was responsible.
We need to go up the chain.
Right.
It needs to go up the chain.
But here's the point that I want to make. The officers still the officers involved that fired their weapons, they still had a legally obtained, or they had a legal warrant for doing what they were doing. They were still operating with a warrant. They weren't doing it. So I still think the same rules apply for protecting those officers in that particular situation. Now, if it comes out that they were directly responsible for the misinformation that led to that warrant, and that warrant is found to be illegal, now they're culpable. Now the situation changes.
I don't know if we have the proper laws in place to deal with people obtaining warrants illegally with falsified information. I don't know if we can full out prove that happened, if there's any charge that they will get charged with.
Yeah, I don't know either.
With this part of the conversation and going this way, we need to talk. What needs to be talked about is: do we now think that this problem as a whole is way deeper than just the officers? Then maybe
it
goes way deeper.
Yeah, it's the system. I mean, it has to start from the top up, from the federal government all the way down to the states and the local governments. It's gotta start there, and that's the only way we're gonna have any real substantive change in our laws and the way that the police operate. And we don't need to defund the police. We need to retrain the police, and we also it's too important of a job for just anybody to just do that job. So I think that there should definitely be more training, and maybe even require a college degree. I mean, if you're going to be an FBI agent, you got to have a college degree. So why shouldn't a police officer have a college degree as well? And also more training and everything. So,
Patrick, there was somebody's point that we're wanting to get to. I don't want to miss them before we run out of time here. Okay, so yeah, that's none. I can't hear you, Patrick. Can't hear you. No,
Muted
no
yourself.
dice.
My bad. I was trying to stop the echo. Yeah. So can we talk about how they were at the wrong apartment, and that the guy that they were looking for was already in custody? Obviously there was a breakdown in communication between the officers all involved in this same case, and to not get the information that the person that they were actually looking for was in custody. And that is something where
I don't think
mistakes
that's
happen.
I don't think that hold on guys. I don't think that's accurate. I don't think Crystal, I don't think that that's actually what happened. I think that was something that was kind of like an early on rumor mill type deal, because
Yeah, they were not at the wrong apartment. They were looking for somebody who was already in custody. It was,
right.
if I recall correctly, it was her ex,
Right.
which they caught moments before they dealt anything with her apartment.
Well, see that,
And when you
that's
say
the problem
moments
with the media.
before, what do you mean?
Adam? You had something?
Okay. That's the problem. That's the problem with the media is that, well, one of the problems with the media is they help perpetuate the cycle because they do not get all of the clear, concise information before they broadcast it. They just go with what they got before they even fact check it. I mean, that's why we always people get tried twice in big cases. They get tried in the media and then they get tried in the courts. I mean, I know it's hard in this 24-hour, news world that we live in to not have news on it, but I always try to wait until the court case before, when all the information actually comes out before I want to make a decision on something like that, because, then that way you're at least, maybe you don't get all the facts, but at least you're getting most of the facts and as accurate as they possibly can be.
Yeah, no, that's one of the things too. And you got to remember too, especially on this show with me and Beats, we by no means believe that we know everything about it. You know what I mean? Like, we try to speak in like kind of a commentary type of way, a back and forth. It's more of a discussion about what's going on rather than us saying, hey, this is how it is. And this is, well,
Right.
Actually Beats says that every 5 minutes, but he's an emotional guy.
But, you know what? I've learned so much in these last 3 shows, and in leading up to these last 3 shows, like in the back scene. You know what I mean? I've learned so much about different things that I was absolutely wrong about. And you guys all know that I will fall on my sword heavy if I get something wrong. But
Too
this
quickly,
is
in my opinion.
Yeah. But this is a learning channel. Sorry, no copyright infringement. My bad. But it's a learning channel.
It's fine. We're making such big bucks. We can afford to get sued by TLC, HIJK, LMNOP. Mike, you look like you had something you want to say there. We kind of talked over you there for a minute.
Yeah. First of all, I'm just addressing comments. So it was the right apartment.
Yep.
It was the right person. Technically, because they were looking for her ex-boyfriend and they were using supposed ties between her and his activities, which is what's up for debate if there's actual evidence there, because it's very sketchy if there is or not. But he had not been in custody for 24 hours. He had been in custody for a matter of moments. They tried to execute 2 warrants at once, one on his place, one on her place. His went off first. They had him in custody before they ever entered her home. And so if they had communicated properly, they would have known that their suspect was in custody. However, a lot of the stuff about him being held for 24 hours and it being the wrong place and all that type of stuff, that is not true.
That's a big point to clear up.
Wasn't she what, Pat?
Wasn't she on the warrant as well, though?
I thought just her residence was. I thought that she didn't actually have a warrant for her arrest, but she had a warrant to have her place searched. And I don't think that it was her, but it might be. But I haven't heard any of the police things talk about Breonna actually being someone they were trying to take into custody. Only that they did have a warrant to search her place for the activity that she was tied to with the boyfriend and everything else. But I don't know. We can look that up. Nicole, you actually seem like a pretty knowledgeable. Can you see if we can see like an article or something like that tells us whether or not she was actually a suspect on the warrant rather than just her residence was on the warrant? That'd help out.
Well, and I
Well,
think
I'm
like
gonna-
Crystal's bringing up the point that he didn't live there, and I think that was they were going after her apartment because of their ties. I think it was all that I don't have any issue with. They when they're searching for somebody, they're searching for somebody, and that's what.
If it's all
that's obviously-
legit, I don't have any issue with it.
It's pretty
Right.
standard practice. I mean, they were trying to execute both of the warrants at almost exactly the same time for the element of surprise, and they just they should have communicated better. It could have hopefully stopped this whole horrific thing from happening, but
I think the execution of the warrants at the same time is actually kind of dumb, in my opinion. Because why don't you just have somebody sit on the second house, the one where you don't think they're at, like Breonna Taylor's house? You know what I mean? If you got all this evidence and you're sure that there's ties between the two, then why not just sit on Breonna Taylor's house, execute it on his house? If you get him, then you get him. If you don't get him, and you think that he's at Breonna Taylor's house, if that's truly the case, then you'll see him come outside.
Nicole,
Right?
I got a question for you. Here's a good point right here. We were talking about this earlier. So she said, trust me, I got the real facts, or I wouldn't speak on it. Are the real facts just what the police are saying? That's kind of my question. I understand that they'll have more validity, and often than not, we have to trust the officers to a certain extent, because then what are we doing with law enforcement? We can't put everything into a hearsay, he said, she said. So my question, I guess, is like, at what point do we scrutinize what we're being told about a situation? Like, how many conflicting reports from civilians do we have to have before it starts to go, well, maybe there's some back and forth on this? Like, because that's kind of where I always see it is, I do believe that to a certain extent we have to trust officers' testimony, because otherwise, like, they're going to spend all their lives just proving that they're telling the truth, right? But at the same
Right.
time, I can't dismiss when I hear civilians saying something out, because not all civilians lie. I mean, we saw like a lot of things, especially in the like the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, especially in our beautiful Los Angeles. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that notorious city, but in Los Angeles, they proved that the cops were lying about a lot of stuff that the civilians were telling the truth about. And they had come out multiple times, and they literally had arrested people that had spoke out against the officers, and they didn't even get a settlement or nothing. So when we get to a certain extent, like, I think we really do need to take in all sides. And I do think that we don't need to rush to judgment. When we're talking about what we think about warrants or this, that, and the other thing, there's certain things I'll stand on pretty hard. I'll stand on the fact that if there's a body cam present, it needs to be on. Period. Why are we paying for body cams if they're not on? This is ridiculous. You know how many cases this could have solved already? Like, it seems to me that a body cam should be a policeman's best friend, right? A police officer's best friend. Because this is going to show, no matter what, in every single situation, that he took the right steps, that he did things the right way, which is the same thing that they said, they say in the trials, right? It's the same testimony and whatever else, even if video evidence is not submitted. So why is it so hard to get these body cams turned on? And why is it so hard to get the footage when we know that there's body cams, but there's always this missing footage aspect? How important do you guys think?
The officer should have no control of the body cam, period. We live in 2020 going on 2021. That body cam should turn on when Mr. Officer clocks in, turns his car on, something. We got cars that drive themselves, but we can't turn a body cam on. We can't disable it to where you can't turn it off until you clock out of your shift. Come on. That's ridiculous. That shouldn't even be a question of when. That should be a question of why it's not happening.
What do you guys think? Adam, what do you think, buddy?
Oh, I definitely believe that they should have body cams on, and they should be showing, what's going on their day-to-day shift, because that will ultimately prove that they were doing the right thing or if they were doing the wrong thing. And then we got video evidence, and so there shouldn't be too much up for debate.
Patrick?
I agree with that. I mean, they have no problem keeping cameras in stuff like us. I mean, as technology advances, we're under more and more scrutiny all the time. So I think it makes sense that body cams be on all the time. I'd also like to point out something that Nicole threw up after the fact, and that was when and I think this point gets missed. There's also a lot of witnesses that while there are reports that that are contradictive of the officer's story, there's also several that collaborate it. So we have witnesses, civilian witnesses to the event that both agree with the officers and disagree with the officers. So we can't just talk about one. We have to include both. So this is one of those situations where had a body cam been on, or if all the officers had body cams on, maybe we would get a much better story as to what was actually happening that night. There were obviously mistakes made. I mean, and that's the thing. And the sad truth is those mistakes cost a woman their life or her life.
Ooh, look at this, boys. Look at this. I'm assuming that's open, not pooed. In Japan, as soon as the snap is popped on a holster, that body cam comes on and dispatch is called. What do you think about that system?
Wow. See, that's the technology that we need. You know what I mean? That's simple. You know what I'm saying? That's simple. Not only is everybody's protected on all angles there. We're like, oh, yeah, my homie's got his gun out. We want to sit on the rest of the homies to pull up. You know what I'm saying? Like, I see that aspect of it, but it also protects the person who's getting the gun pulled on them, just in case that officer decides to react or makes an incorrect split decision or whatever it is. It's on camera. And I don't like that they're here. Okay? They need to be here, up here, over here, up here, but not here. Because what happens? What is an officer trained to do when they pull their firearm out?
That's a good point. We usually do see that first-person shooter view, right, with the guns and hands in front. Mike, we kind of skipped over you, buddy. How do you feel about the situation? What do you think about like having a mandate for body cams to be turned on, etc.?
I think it's highly needed because we've already seen cases where they've turned them off to shoot people.
So let's not put an off switch on them, huh?
Nope.
Yeah, off switch gone.
I agree with that. I think we see a lot of cases where there's a lot of misinformation out there on these cases because we don't see all the information, right? And I think a body cam would answer that. And yes, I mean, civilians, suspects, criminals, everybody is capable of lying, but so is an officer. And unfortunately, we live in a time now where with so much scrutiny being put on the police officers, and so much negativity being thrown at them, like we saw a case the other day where two officers were having lunch and somebody ran up on them and just shot them. Now, luckily, both those officers are going to survive, right? Now, if part of the problem is that police have been, we've been dealing with this system for a while, right? So we have internal affairs that is actually policing police, which we know isn't working because a lot of these things, slip through the crack. And I think we're to the point now where, body cam, civilian oversight, non-police people policing the police is actually the answer in the direction that we need to go.
I totally agree with that. I don't think police should ever police the police.
And that is to protect all the good police officers out there, just as well as it is to protect the civilians that have to deal with these police officers. Our constitutional rights literally state in the Constitution that they shall not be infringed on, this is just how it is. So I would like personally to see those rights protected by the police, as well as, being able to make sure that our good police officers are safe, and that if somebody does get out of line, we have the proper ways to deal with it.
So Chuck put this up, and I just went and looked it up. So the the city has said a couple of times that they didn't have body cams on, and if they did have body cams, they weren't turned on. So it's not the case. They wouldn't. I don't think that they'd be able to straight up lie and say they have no body cam footage and then pop it up in a trial. So I'm going to go with what they're telling us and assume that we're not going to be seeing any body cam footage even at the trial, because I can understand why to a certain extent the private, but a lot of video evidence is also inadmissible. I don't know if you've ever watched, I watch a lot of like court TV. I watch a lot of court TV. I know I'm like basically 70, even though I'm like, you know, in my mid 20s. Do you guys buy that? Mid 20s? Anyways.
Lies.
But what I actually noticed is they actually omit the video footage because they believe it taints the jury. So what they want the jury to be able to focus on is the actual facts of the case. So I entered the residence, I saw this person, I did this, whatever else. So if you just happen to notice, like, this is a good example, okay? So a police officer is serving a warrant. He opens up the door. He ends up firing. He ends up killing somebody, okay? Say it's a justified shooting, but it still goes to court. Or a semi-justified, it's up in the air, right? A jury will convict him if it looks like he smiled. And that doesn't have anything to do with him putting his policy forward. It doesn't have anything to do with how he exercised his regulations. People do that all the time. So what we see is that juries are very easily swung by emotional weigh-ins. So when they see things like this, when they see a cop shoot a kid, right, that immediately elicits a very emotional reaction. They have a really hard time finding in defense of that cop, even if that cop was doing what he was supposed to do. So a lot of times they don't let this video evidence come out in the main trial after the jury has reached this is no kidding, after the jury's reached this decision, then they show them the video. I know for a fact because there's been a couple of times that we've seen where they've gone back and seen the video and spoke to like interviews and stuff. And we're like, if I had saw that video, I would not have voted not guilty, or I would have voted guilty, or whatever else. Like there's a lot of these interactions where they can actually say, hey, I'm sorry, this footage would actually grant this person an unfair trial because the jury would, no matter what, be biased against them, and they get it dismissed altogether. So here's another loophole that we have in the body cam footage issue.
Well, then that's a loophole that's
Body
got to
cam-
be addressed.
Yeah, body cam footage should always be admissible no matter what. You shouldn't be able to fight that, because that's a variable that, if changed, can change the whole narrative. If you don't see it, you can have no narrative, and it's whatever the officer's narrative is and whoever else witnessed it, if there was any other witnesses. So you have to be able to admit it into court no matter what. And if you are being videotaped, you should have no clear cut. Just like working in a call center, if you're being recorded, there should be no reason for you to ever say anything bad about your job, because you're being recorded and you know you're being recorded. If an officer was being recorded and knew they were being recorded, then they would, holy cow, Kristen. Let me finish my point real quick.
Go for it. Go for it.
If they knew they
Mike
were being
Patrick is still there.
right? If they knew they were being recorded, then they would have more reason to do their job correctly. You see what I'm saying? Like, you have more reason to do your job correctly in the call center because you know you're being recorded.
Sure.
It'll just weed it down the funnel. Okay, now we got Kristen.
So Kristen writes, my brother-in-law, I'm assuming, my brother-in-law was beaten by several police officers in New Orleans. It was right after Katrina. It was very bad there. They beat him until almost death and then dropped him off in a very, very dangerous area. Because of the severity of Katrina, there was never any accountability for it. Nothing ever happened. Body cams that auto turn on could have stopped this.
True story. And the footage needs to be uploaded to a cloud that only the judge has access to, or somebody in the civil police affairs that has access to. But it shouldn't be the cops that they have access to that video.
I agree. But I think I'm agreeing based on the basis of emotion, man. You know, they say justice is blind. Why is justice blind? Does anybody know the answer to this? Now, a lot of people like to have this colloquial idea that justice is blind because it applies equally to everybody. Unfortunately, the reason that justice wears a blindfold is because facts of the case, actions, and their natural jurisdiction, it has nothing to do with the visual representation or who that person is as an identity or anything else. Justice is blind because she does not see you as someone who's smiling during murder. Justice is blind because she does not see you as a person. She sees you as nothing but a set of facts and a set of factors. So when we look at it, we understand why you have to take some of the emotional out of the jury for people to get a free or a fair trial. So because it's not about how you feel. And a lot of times, unless we're talking about something with premeditation, it's not about necessarily how you planned it or anything else. When you're trying to decide the charge, that is, it comes down to what you actually did in this situation and what the law actually is for each step that you took. So you have like this framework that it sits in. Well, people will vote against the framework if they don't like someone that's on the stand. If they find someone to be creepy or scary looking, you know, they're more likely to send somebody who looks really mean away for aggressive assault than somebody who looks really great. So that's why they try to eliminate as many of these emotional ties in the courtroom so that you can actually have this blind justice. She serves justice no matter what you see, what you are, what you're doing, anything else. You lay down the facts before her, she figures it out. Mike, you look like you had something. Go ahead.
I agree with you up to a point, John, but I do believe that the body cam footage should still be entered into evidence. Then that way that they can't say that at least it wasn't there, because I mean that's up to the judge and the prosecuting or defense attorney to argue whether or not the body cam footage should be entered. But at least it's at least it should be admissible. At least it's entered into evidence, so it's there. But that's how I feel about it.
Patrick, you were doing some research. What'd you come up with?
How do you know I'm researching?
It's because you're like this.
Yeah, well, I like to check things. This is one of those subjects that's different, John. I get your point. I get what you're saying, but you know what? Like, I believe the people in a jury have a responsibility to convict based on all the information. And if we have actual footage of the crime, then that is part of the information. Now, a lot of the ideals that you just brought up, they stem from a time in history when the idea of actually being able to record something and film it didn't exist. You know, sure. We have grown as a society, and we can either embrace the technological advances that we have and apply them, you know, to our legal system as well as other systems in our country, or we cannot. You know, but if we don't, I think we're leaving a loophole. Now, here's the thing: that body cam footage is used to charge civilians with more crimes. So wouldn't it make sense? And it's used to convict civilians of those crimes. So wouldn't it be equally fair to use it to convict officers as well as convict officers? Just simply throwing it out simply because people shouldn't have to see it is bullshit.
That whole point about throwing it out because people shouldn't have to see it, like, what about the whole line, you are being judged by a panel of your peers? Okay, so people who are around you. Why do we got to take their feeling out of it? Because it's still, you're my peer. All you guys are my peers. You're all in my age group. You all think different, though. You all think different. So I don't even think that, you know how they even select the jury? There's a jury selection process, and you get to throw out this person or throw out that person or select this person, select that person. It should be completely random to be judged by a panel of your peers, okay? From somewhere else, from a different
what
county.
what holds a juror to a standard of impartiality? What makes a juror impartial? Because they don't get training. They don't get conditioning. They're not required to have any idea what the laws are other than what the prosecuting attorney tells them the laws are when they're decided to make the decisions. So how can you make a jury impartial if not removing the emotion out of it? Justice doesn't have anything to do with emotion, man. Justice has nothing to do with that. The law, that has nothing to do with your feelings, brother. That has only to do with black and white facts, observations, the rules, the lines, and everything in between.
I'm still
justice system-
questioning why we have a jury then at that point, because then you're really you're taking a very important cog out of the machine, bro.
Patrick, you're muted.
Whoa, we have a jury because that is what we require for our system. See, having a jury and being convicted by 12 members, a panel of 12 people, the number is specific for a reason. The fact that it takes an entire jury, all 12 of them, to convict you of a crime before they strip you of your rights, your liberty, and your freedom, that is one of the cornerstones of our system, right? Like, it's not a democracy, right? Like, we're a republic. It's not a democracy. If it was a democracy, 7 people could convict you of a crime, whether those other 4 didn't exist or didn't agree. You know, the fact that an 11-1 vote is a hung jury is literally like one of the cornerstones of our system. So for me personally, I want it to absolutely stay that way, because if there is any chance that you are innocent, then that should be, you know, that you have that right. And that's why we use a jury system.
Okay, I don't disagree with the jury system, and I know that's what it absolutely sounded like, but I was just raising the question, you know what I mean? Like, how can we take, you know, we have a very well-oiled machine with what our justice system, well, let me take that back. We have a machine. We have a machine that is our justice system that needs some maintenance, okay? Now, here we are taking out parts of things of that justice system to make it fit the prosecution side or that side or this law or that law or this or that. Why can't our justice system just be black and white? Because if it was black and white, won't it make it easier to decide whether or not somebody's telling the truth or not? You know what I mean? Or decide whether or not this person is guilty or they're innocent? If it was black and white, there's no gray area, then we wouldn't have a problem.
No. I disagree. I think the fact that we don't have a gray area is a lot of the problem with the legislations that we have. Things are so black and white that even an accidental infraction can totally tank you. It can totally bring charges against you. You have to go through a whole jurisdiction rigmarole over some crap. I think that we both need the black and white, and we need a little gray area. We need to stay impartial, but we need to keep morality in our ideas when we're actually going to convict people. So when it really comes down to it, we need to remove all the emotion out of it so we can use our emotions properly. Anybody buying that?
I can partially agree with that one, but I'm not going to jump all the way on the boat. I got a foot on because I get your concept.
I've not heard from Mike.
Though.
I
want to hear what Mike has to say.
We are
what? Juries? Cam footage? What?
You're just supposed to jump in hard with something that just starts swinging. No, okay, so we're talking about juries now. Let's talk about it. Do you believe an impartial jury is necessary?
We got to deal with what we get as far as juries go. You know, we have plenty of stuff in place with juries. Jury is not anywhere close to my concern with the justice system.
What's your number one concern with the justice system, Mike?
I have so many.
We have this show where we go back and forth with guests on their feelings about things. So pick one.
Light him up, bro. Light him up.
Qualified immunity is a big
Qualified
one. In my opinion, most of what qualified immunity is okay, so you broke a law. Cool, you're good. Never mind. Just move along. Like, it doesn't even come into play until they're guilty.
Yeah.
It doesn't protect good officers, which leads into another one of my biggest problem with the justice system is good officers don't get any protection and piece of shit ones do. Like, you get into the stuff where it's, you know, good officers that speak up for what's right, point out corruption, whistleblower cops have no protections. Oftentimes they're charged with obstruction of justice, lose their job, lose their pensions. Meanwhile, the ones that are actually breaking laws, purposefully assaulting people, killing people, are getting nothing. They're getting patted on the back. They're keeping their pensions even when they get put in prison for some of their charges. No, not okay.
That's a big point. And it's something that I really feel like probably everybody here to a certain extent agrees that, hey, guest, can you stop playing with the comments? I'm glad you're muted.
I think Adam should weigh in on that too when you're done, John.
Absolutely. That's where it. Go ahead, Adam.
What were we talking about?
Exactly. Qualified immunity, my friend. We're talking about whether or not qualified immunity doesn't even kick in until after, like, you've already decided that they're guilty and everything else. So, like, stripping it from it, how does it fix actually cops doing something that is wrong if we don't even determine when they've done something wrong, that immunity goes away until after they've been convicted? So, really, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, no, I think they shouldn't have the immunity until after the to see whether or not they're going to be convicted or not, because then they don't need it. And I mean, qualified immunity to me, like, the police shouldn't be granted it as much as they are. It's more to protect the cities and the states and the federal government. In my eyes, it's to protect the the police departments from the bad apples. Yeah, that's how I think it should be used. Like, if a cop does something wrong and it's found that he did it wrong and he did it with malicious intent, then he should be charged. I mean, there's no other way around it. I mean, because then all the bad cops are making the good cops look like bad cops. So, like, you shouldn't even, qualified immunity should not be granted to you until it is determined whether or not you're gonna be charged with something or not. And if
you know what, I changed my mind on the thing I hate the most about the justice system and policing. You know what it is? It's officers that have been convicted of crap and fired for things getting hired a town over.
Oh, definitely.
National reporting agency. We have none. So I wanted to pop up a quick fact for you real quick. You may have seen it earlier over here. And what it basically is quick fact. There is currently no national system for reporting law enforcement misconduct. Many cities and states do not have laws in place that actually prevent or penalize or discriminate against whistleblowers or protect from the penalized or discrimination against police whistleblowers. So not only do we have this two-edged sword that says, hey, we don't have anything that requires them to report to, like, say, the federal government and say, hey, look, we fired this cop because he excessively shot 16 people when he was supposed to be at a noise complaint. Instead, all of that just gets buried, and then we get to allow that cop to go to the next place and the next place and the next place. And he's the cop that we usually see in these issues that we fight about on shows like this, because it really comes down to it. It's very rarely the first offense or the first time this person has done that. And so
Yeah.
that is the main reason that I am such a big advocate as this nationalized policy standard, because you don't have to create a new force that is federally, the police. You just have to create a specific set of requirements that every police department has to do. If your officer is fired because of excessive force, that needs to be reported. There needs to be a background check. You're going to background check my 22 pistol, right? You got to know whoever has touched it, what my background is, what that background is, because of the potential damage that it causes, right? Because I could take that 22 and just kill a bunch of people. So I have to jump through all this bureaucratic red tape as a civilian and do all of my background and everything else. But we don't want to taint an officer's reputation by letting him know what happened at the last department or requiring it to be submitted to any kind of oversight committee.
Definitely should be.
Excessive force should be an automatic 6 months suspended, no pay or something like that. You know what I mean? Next one, you're fired.
So should
And you
rape.
don't get to hire again.
To talk about how many officers are out raping people, because that's not a good statistic. That should be an immediate fired and never work as a cop again. That should be an immediate charged.
Or taking bribery from people like that. Like there's a lot I've heard of officers getting some Becky from the local hooker and like giving the hooker
Becky?
a pass.
They call it Becky? Where do they call it Becky? Is that
Plenty of places.
Is that hip chick lingo? I don't know that.
Hey, there's actually a street out here that's called Becky Street, and I looked over at my Caucasian fiance and I said, "Hey, can we drive down that road and give me some Becky on Becky?"
I feel like this is a race thing. Is it Becky because it's a white name? Is that what's going on here?
Bro, it's okay. It's definitely a street thing to call it Becky. Some people even call it Monica. Monica Lewinsky. Like, yeah.
Well, I guess
we're derailing here. We shouldn't even be talking about this right now.
So anyways, making their backgrounds mandatory and having to submit that information over to the federal government or some sort of overseeing national agency that can actually, be like, hey, you can't hire this guy. You send in his paperwork and his background has been flagged. He's already been fired for excessive force. Like, what do you guys feel about that? Patrick, we haven't heard from you in a bit. I mean, do you think that could help?
I think that there needs to be, it depends on the situation. Obviously, I think it's situational in almost every situation. Like, we have to look at it differently. If an officer uses excessive force, for example, then there ought to be a period of retraining and things like that before he's able to actually police again.
So if he's fired for it, though, if he's fired for excessive force.
Okay, again, it depends on the severity. If he is fired for it, then is it an automatic he never gets to work in the trade again, or is it a way that he can earn his way back from it?
Yeah, I think if you're a security guard and you break somebody's collarbone at the mall, you should probably not be a security guard anymore.
Well, I get Patrick's point here. There needs to be there is some situations, because I even thought about this before I even said what I said, but there's situations where not anxiety, but what's the word I'm looking for? Adrenaline takes over. You know what I mean? Like it takes over and you don't really know what you're doing. And I heard this actually out of one of my gun groups. He was a veteran. He said that, he remember, like, there's a specific situation. He remembers taking 5 shots, but he actually shot like 8 times on whatever the situation was. And he's like, because of the adrenaline, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't even know. So Patrick does have a very valid point, bro. Some situations in the adrenaline, you might go a little overboard. You know what I mean? But
who here hates cops? Put your hand down, Mike. Who here thinks that cops are all bad? Who here thinks that cops are bastards. Who here thinks that all cops are racist? Who here thinks all cops are evil? So we agree that when we're talking about things that when it comes to police and their capabilities and everything, we acknowledge that it's okay to want change for a system, not because you don't hate it, but because you care about it, right? Like, I care about law enforcement. I care about the civilians under them, and I care about police officers. You guys have, if any police officer ever watches this show, God forbid that they do, but if they do, I just want to tell you, you putting on that badge is huge. We're not against 90% of the cops. We're not even against 98% of them. What we are debating is whether or not the system is allowing police to police correctly, to police in the most efficient, safest, effective manner, in the fairest manner, in the way that we can do it. So when we talk about, police this, police that, police and everything else, we know that we have to look up statistics to actually tell you these things. So if we have to look up a specific number of how many people were involved in alleged force or everything else, then we know the majority isn't. Because we would already just assume all cops use excessive force, all cops are racist, all cops kill. Because that is not the case. I don't wear this hat ironically. I wear it to show people that I don't hate law enforcement, that I support law enforcement. A bunch of my family members are law enforcement. A bunch of the people I know that are friends and loved ones are law enforcement. And a lot of them are the ones that say, hey, man, I did it the right way my whole career. How come Officer, Steven from the next town over gets away with a whole bunch of crap and I had to work my ass off to do everything the right way? Why are they saying that it's impossible to be a good cop without all of these special rulings, and I've never had to use a single one of them? We need to honor the good cops by saying, hey, you're a good cop. You deserve to be protected. You deserve to have your word listened to. You deserve to be promoted. You deserve to be paid. You deserve to be reinforced and everything else. And what's not going to happen is we're not going to let bad cops push their fraternity mindset on you. We're not going to let them ruin your careers. We're not going to let them kill you or not show up to traffic stops. We're not going to let that shit happen because we back the blue.
Why do good cops put on a shoe that doesn't fit them in the first place then? You know what I mean? Like you were saying in the beginning of that, why do I got to pay for this bad cop's decisions? If the shoe doesn't fit, then don't wear it, bro. Ain't nobody talking to you. You know what I'm saying? So why you all up in the hussy foot over something that doesn't even apply to you? Now you're putting yourself in a situation as a victim when you're not even being called the victim. Like you said, I believe in cops, bro. There's some cops that I've come across that have made strides in my life. You know what I mean? Like when I rolled that Buick Rendezvous, the cop was the one who made me feel like I was safe. You know what I mean? He's like, your eyes in your face, you didn't lose it. Like he just was making me feel safe. That should come from the EMT. The EMT was just like dragging me around and stuff like that. You know what I mean? But the cop is the one who made me feel comfortable. So don't get it wrong. I like cops, but I promise you, I will tell you when you're being a D-bag. I straight tell people when they're being hurt, cops are being a D-bag.
I've got an answer for this, but what do you want to say, guys?
Let's. I always take the podium first on questions. Somebody else take it.
The law, Chuck. The law.
So apparently, 2 police officers were just shot in Louisville, Kentucky, right now over this Breonna Taylor situation. So that didn't take very long. I'd like to get back to a point that I don't know. The story is just now hitting. I'd like to get back to a point that I was trying to make before, though. The average time served for murder in this country is 13 years, or I believe it's like 13 and a half years, basically. For violent crimes that don't include murder, it's like 2.5 years. See, our justice system always gives a second chance, even when you take a life, the vast majority of the time. So to blanketly state that if a police officer makes a mistake, that his career is done for life, regardless of the circumstances of that mistake, I'm just not willing to make that decision right away. I think there needs to be a little bit more scrutiny to that. Are there situations where that needs to be 100%? Then yes, I think that there are. Earlier it was brought up about the sexual abuse system or sexual abuse allegations with police officers. I think that is a drastic abuse of power. And it's one that is really hard to get facts on because it goes largely unreported. Because if you're pulled over and sexually assaulted by a police officer, who the hell do you call? So this is a system that is flawed. Okay, 100% it is flawed. But one of the things, like, blanket terms don't work. I'm sorry. And if you, no matter what changes we make, and this is why I think all police officers while on duty ought to absolutely be wearing a body cam, because that would probably help with the sexual assault stuff, especially if they have no way of turning it off. I think that would help in those situations. But ultimately, as a society, and an American society at that, we are, this is a government by the people and for the people. So ultimately, it's up to us to decide, the people, how we are going to, what level of authority we're going to give the police over us. And I think we need to be very cautious about that. I mean, in times like right now, where it is very easy to just have a knee-jerk emotional reaction to the situations that we're seeing and say, we see it all the time in protests, all cops are bastards and all this other stuff. And people want this reform and they want it to come down hard and heavy. We need to be pragmatic in our approach, and we need to make sure that we're looking at all sides of this before we just blatantly make changes to a system that does need to be changed. Yes, but we need to make sure that we're not doing it for the wrong reasons. And I'm sorry, a system that just destroys a person's career for one mistake, that doesn't really work.
When that mistake is destroying someone's life, you don't think that comes into it?
Like I said, John, you will serve about 13.4 years if you are convicted of murder. That's a murder.
And do you think I'm going to get a job with that felony on my record?
When your debt to society is done, your debt to society is done.
That's not how felonies work.
That's
not how background checks work.
America. We talk about this all the time in other situations. Like, people wanted to bring up George Floyd's past. They wanted to talk about the things that he did. And to somehow justify the fact that he was killed. Well, that's a bunch of bullshit. Once your debt to society is done, your debt to society is done. Period. Right? That's how.
I agree with you, Patrick. Then why do people have to carry felonies then?
That's a really great question. It's a really great question. I don't have the answer for that.
So you have the answer.
That's why I asked it.
Do that. But you shouldn't. You don't have. Okay. Why don't you just for 1 minute weigh in on us, the civilian side, and tell us if you feel that's fair, that if I commit a felony for the rest of my life, I have a felony on my record, and say my chosen career was, I don't know, kindergarten teacher.
I guess it depends on the felony, doesn't it?
No. If you have a felony, that is 9 times out of 10 an automatic. No, you're not getting hired here, period. Most things say if you have a misdemeanor, it can be nonviolent.
I think some of the things that you carry for life, like registering as a sex offender, you have to carry that for life. You probably shouldn't be allowed to work around children at that point. I think that's probably a fair assessment. If you, does that mean you should lose your right to vote for life? No,
you cannot, and that is unconstitutional. That is.
Again, I'm saying no, it doesn't mean that, but that does happen. Granted, there is a system in place where you can work to getting those rights back, but it is actually a very difficult system to do. So while being, now if you rob a bank and you shoot a security guard, and blah, 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 should you be allowed to purchase firearms again later in life?
Hold on. What do you think, Pat?
Honestly, this is one of those questions that I go back and forth on, because I believe that if it is my right to do something, then it shall not be taken away. Then it can't be taken away, right? If it's my God-given right to breathe, it can't be taken away. If it's my God-given right to vote, it can't be taken away. Am I willing to make exceptions to that? Well, now we're just negotiating. So if we're willing to make exceptions to one of those, then we have to be willing to make exceptions to all of those. And that, in my mind, is a problem.
Did we lose Mike?
Mike,
I want to weigh in on that. Well, that one's with the birds. Never mind. That one lost. I lost that. I lost what I was going to say.
it's gone.
I want to be clear here. I think there's a lot of problems in our justice system. I think there's a lot of things that need our attention. I just think that we need to be, very cautious about just coming in swinging, with a, we got to change this. We got to change that. It's this, it's that, when we make these kind of decisions, change happens slowly. First of all, second of all, when we do these things, we need to be very, very aware of the long-term consequences of the decisions that we make. Do I think adding full-time body cams a good thing? Yes. Do I think we have, are there other things that need to be done as well? Yes. There's a lot to this situation that needs to be looked at. Unfortunately, there isn't one blanket thing to do that will change everything, right? Like there's no one answer to everything. Unfortunately, it took a long time to get our legal system to this level of disarray, and it's going to take a long time to get it out. And so we need to be ready for that. That's all I wanted to say.
I feel like you're 100% correct as far as the machine works slowly and that we should never rush to do things. We've been asking for these same kind of changes since about late 1960s, 1970s. I think it's time. I think it's time we sat at the table. I think it's time we put down the banter and picked up the pen and started writing some legislation. I think we need to get together a committee, a real committee, civilian based, but with actual law enforcement background, law enforcement education, everything else, and start looking how we police, period, because it's long overdue. And I don't think that cops should be left out of that conversation. I think law enforcement should be there. But I think that the current systems that we put in place are ones that have been there for a very, very long time, and they have proven to be inefficient systems.
Very true story.
Mike.
Truth.
I know we lost you there for a second. When it comes to legal reform, when it comes to these things, do you feel we're being too hasty as a society by asking for it? Do you feel like we're amping up too much with this BLM thing? I mean, do you think this is the timing?
I personally think that, actually, let me respond to Pat first. Pat, if a cop gets fired for abuse of force, for abusing his badge and his gun and his duty, he should be done policing forever, period. I don't give a shit. If you're a doctor and you fuck up that bad, you get your license pulled. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. Now, I do think in a lot of ways we are being too hasty, but I also believe that some of this haste is needed. We need to find a balance there, but letting things sit for a year and a half while evidence is just sitting in a locker, not cool. Trying to get things going, before there's proper time to research and look into it, also not cool. We need to find a balance.
Oh, we definitely.
Yeah.
We can't just jump right into it. We need to, have something set up, because if we sit there and try to rush everything and try to make sweeping changes, then it's gonna fall apart faster, I believe, than it would if we took our time. But yeah, we can't wait forever, but we definitely gotta take our time and be judicious about it.
True.
Agreed.
Let me answer, just respond a little bit, Mike. There are some crimes that you commit in this society that carry the death penalty depending on the state that you're in. That's about the most permanent end to what you're doing. And I agree with you. There comes a level, there comes a point where an officer loses his job or his option, his career for life, and should be tried the exact same way as civilians are, in my opinion, as well. I'm just saying where that line is, I don't know. And
I'll tell you where that line is for me.
I don't
Most
think it's
people that get charged with abuse of force or excessive force, I should say. Most officers that get those types of accusations, and even officers that get charged with it, a lot of them don't lose their job. So if they do lose their job, it was probably serious enough that they shouldn't get another one.
So Chris brings up a good point. If a police officer can't be reformed and to do better, what chances do criminals have?
A criminal only has to be reformed to go back to normal life. That's it. Reforming someone to go back to making life and death decisions with a gun in his hand, that's a little different.
That's a good answer. It's a good
I don't think that they can't be redeemed as human beings. I don't think that they can't continue to be, members of society that contribute and, have their rights and do good and all that type of stuff. But there is an oath and an honor to a lot of jobs where you serve the people of this country and the people of your community. And if you take an oath and you break it, done.
I got a little bit of a I guess you say monkey wrench. I'll throw in you two here at the bottom with your conversation. So you have DUIs, okay? I know it's not the same thing really, but it's the concept is what I'm looking to explain here. You have DUIs, and a person who gets caught in a DUI has committed that action probably hundreds of times before they got caught. Okay, and this kind of ties into
really bad luck.
Exactly, or you know what I mean. But it ties into what is excessive, right? An officer who gets caught for having excessive force, if we're applying that same statistic to this same situation, what do you think we'll find? You know what I mean? Did this cop really, if the cop will actually tell the truth and say what it really was, did he do this a bunch of times before he actually got caught? Is that not considered excessive? You know what I mean? Just because you didn't do it, you slap somebody like this or you slap somebody like this. You know what I mean? You could slap them like this, but a bunch of these slaps will equal up one of these slaps. You see what I'm saying?
One of our viewers thinks that her opinion doesn't matter. Can we change that mindset right now and explain to her that every American, every civilian, every person here that's concerned about civil liberty or law enforcement, your opinion absolutely matters. The reason we're having this conversation is because we also get a chance to be at the table. We as civilians with no law enforcement super special training also should have a say in how we're governed, in how we're standing there. And that means for the good or the bad. It doesn't mean that we should have to decide everything 100% autonomously on our own. But no, Nicole, your opinion does matter. Everybody in this situation, their opinions matter.
So, Beats, I have a question for you based on what you said. So if you get pulled over and charged with a DUI, should you be charged with 100 DUIs because statistically that's how many that you've done?
No. I get where you're going, but that's not where I'm trying to go at all.
No, I understand where you're going. I just want to make the clarification here. Like, Jad, those things are there. Those things are there for sure. Those ideas. It wasn't the first time. He probably got away with it more and everything else, but we can only convict based on facts that we have and evidence that we actually have. Now, if there's lots of evidence, then we have lots to convict on, but I don't think citizens.
Circle back body cam. Circle back to the body cam.
Exactly. Circle right back
to it.
It solves a lot of problems.
How can I, as a civilian, get arrested with no physical evidence and only the testimony of someone else? How can I be convicted by a jury and go to jail? That's a real thing. We don't have to have 100% concrete evidence. In fact, we don't have to have exactly the steps that happened at the crime scene for a conviction. All we need is a jury to convict. So once again, I understand that it shouldn't be exactly the same for police officers and civilians, but I feel like we're getting the shaft here. We literally are not allowed any protection. We are considered, we say that we're innocent until proven guilty, but if I tell you that my confession was coerced, it's still admissible. I could say literally that a cop stood there and held a gun to my head and forced me to write that confession, and it's still admissible. On top of that, that cop is allowed to lie to me. That cop is allowed to say that they already have all the evidence in the world, and even if they're innocent, I'm screwed, and I might as well just confess and make it easier for me. That cop can say whatever he wants to me in that interrogation room for the most part, and all that stuff holds up in court. And yet here's 5 civilians arguing on whether or not concrete evidence of excessive force should be tried for police.
Did you also know that minor children can be read their Miranda rights and forced to confess to crimes without a parent, without a lawyer, without any other consent, and that is legal? They can't sign a contract, and as a parent, you're legally responsible for everything they do, unless they actually talk to a police officer who gets them to write a confession, and that becomes legally admissible in court. How the hell is that a thing?
That is hard bullshit.
Well, you know what?
It's the truth.
Look, guys, judges and law enforcement and police officers have really, really stressful jobs. So it's not fair for you to get those rights. It's not fair to get to that legislation change, because you know what? Yes, it may affect you in a negative way, in some way. That's true. But at the same time, it just is what it is. You have the protections that you have, or the lack of protections that you have. And since you're not a police officer, nobody's going to ride to your defense to have you have qualified immunity. Nobody's going to ride to your defense and write new legislation unless we start right now. Cops don't write new laws. Let's just put that out there. Who does? Civilians. Taxpayers. Us. I will say this. I love police officers. I know, especially now, you have some of the worst freaking jobs. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mikey.
I will say this. Oftentimes, the police union has a heavy amount of involvement in lobbying for new law.
Right. That's true. And the police union lobbies, which is kind of weird. Kind of a weird situation, really. So it gets convoluted. But what is the base that we take away from this in all of this? And that is, should cops be held to the same exact standards that civilians should be held to?
Yep. 100%, 110,000% yes. I say yes. Patrick?
Sorry, I was muted. I had to unmute it. Yeah, I believe that police should be held to the same standard as civilians. And I think in some ways the Supreme Court, like your other guest was bringing up earlier, they already had ruled on that a long time ago. And somehow it's been diluted since. And I think we need to get back to that Supreme Court ruling, and that once they are in violation of direct constitutional rights or other things, and that immunity then goes away.
Claudia, what protests are you talking about? The ones that are going on right now?
Yeah, Kentucky.
Yeah, I am following it, Claudia. It is a mess out there. And it's actually literally on right in front of me. When I keep looking down, that's what I'm looking at.
I'm just going to say right now, my prayers go out to the officers that are out there dealing with that. And my prayers go out to the people who are peacefully protesting out there for their safety as well. If you're rioting, if you're violent, if you're attacking cops, you can just skip over that. Those prayers aren't for you. And that goes on the other side of the fence too. If you showed up just to kill civilians or whack them out, probably not. But if you did, you can omit yourself from those prayers too as well. Anybody out there that's doing this, I would not want to be there. I would not want to be in Chicago right now. I would not want to be in Louisville right now. And I just want you guys to know that our hearts are with you and our prayers are there for you, man. It's not a good deal.
No.
Mike, you look angry, buddy.
I need a cigarette.
Same. I'm feeling you, brother.
These topics do anger me. And it's not just feeling like we as citizens are getting the unjust end of the stick. I also have police officers that I care about that are worried for their families. I don't know if you guys know where I live or what's going on around me, but I live near Rochester, New York, where stuff just came to light about a black man getting hooded by the police, like bag over his head, and ending up dead from asphyxiation. And after that,
one. I watched that one. That was a rough one.
And after that, a whole bunch of people decided to make threats against the officers and threaten to hunt down their families. And so things are real tense right here. And I have people that I care about both in the black community, in law enforcement, in every aspect of this that I'm worried about daily.
Agreed. We're coming up to the top of the second hour. I see that Adam somehow jumped through the screen and appeared at your house, Beats. That's understandable. That's clearly science. Final thoughts, guys. I definitely just want to reinforce that. Look, we don't think that violence against cops is okay.
Real quick, I don't know what building it is, but there is a very large building on fire in downtown Louisville right now, and I hope that I hope there's nobody inside, because that's a big building.
Louisville is rioting, even though they just came out and convicted the officers involved, one of the officers that was involved. Mike, do you have some insight on that?
Yes, you got to remember, a lot of them wanted murder. A lot of them wanted charges that were more than something that's 1 to 5 years. A lot of people wanted all 3 officers charged. So a lot of this may be hysterical. It may be uncalled for. It may be, reacting off of too much emotion. But there is reasons, whether they're good reasons or not, they're reasons. I think that we have to realize that even if, they get wanton endangerment on one of these cops, if we start looking into all of the, the warrant and its legitimacy, and it's not quite what it says it is, that's a whole bunch of charges that those people wanted and should legitimately get. And it's not going to happen. It's just plain not.
I will definitely say, Nicole Stratton, my heart goes out to you. That's a rough area. My heart goes out to everybody in the comment section that's going through this. Mimi, I know Asheville, they're having a lot of issues down there. When it comes down to it, we have to have a better system, period. We may not agree on how to get that system or what that system consists of, but we all know that change is needed. And it's a matter of life and death. And it's a matter of life and death for officers. It's a matter of life and death for the civilians they police over and everybody in between. I think that's kind of the reason that legal reform is such a huge issue and it has so many convolutions. Right now, we have slipped in and slipped out and pumped up and went down and back forth and everything else because there's so many different facets to it, which is why it leads to that same thing I keep saying, is that we need to form a large enough committee to actually look at this, and it needs to be based on civilian interests and it needs to be based on law enforcement interests to actually look through these things and detail this situation.
Yeah, I agree. we do need a lot of huge reform in our justice system. There's a lot of things that I have a hard stance on, and you guys heard some of them tonight. But I wanted my final thought to be that I believe in police. I don't believe in defunding the police. I believe that that there is a lot of work to be done, and there's a lot of work between all parties involved, the police, citizens, the government, legislation. Everybody needs to come together and figure it out. You know what I mean? We're a village, bro. Like the village raised somebody. You know what I'm saying? It's the same thing, but with making it run cohesively. So those are my final thoughts there. You got some final thoughts, Adam?
Yes, I do believe that there should be reform as well. I believe that it should start at the federal level, though, and it should work its way down. I mean, a lot of people don't agree with that, but that's what I believe is it's got to start at the top and work its way down to the bottom. And we just ELE, everybody love everybody, you know? That's how I feel about
Everybody
it.
love everybody. I love that. Patrick, final thoughts, brother?
Nicole, to answer your question, there's already 500 National Guard on the ground there. Louisville has been very proactive in trying to be ready for anything like this that came up. So they're already out there, and it looks like they are trying to move everybody out of there now. I'm not sure how that's going to go. You know, my final thoughts are really simple, guys. Like, at the end of the day, this is a partnership between us and them, and we need to have a better partnership. Right now, the civilian side tends to get the short end of the stick most of the time. But that doesn't mean that all these police officers are bad. So I know plenty of them. They're really great people. They're patriots in my mind, and I want them to have the best opportunities at going home safe to their family every single night. And as far as those that break the rules and do things that are against the law, whether it be no matter what it is, they need to be dealt with in a way that is actually just and swift, and it needs to happen fast, because when you're dealing with the civilian, a free society like we are, we don't have the room for mistakes like that.
Mike.
So first of all, I'm going to be the odd man out and say that I do agree with not only reform, but in a lot of ways defunding, because I believe in refunding the community. I am personally very much against how much of our community funds from every other sector have been drawn into the police force ever since 9/11 and plenty of other scary moments along the way. I want to see a day when not only do the police make the whole community feel safe, not only do the police not have to fear from their lives from normal everyday citizens, but also a day in which we as communities can actually work towards preventing crime, not just catching people who did crime. I want to work towards the community programs and stuff that got defunded for us to hire more police in inner cities. I want to see us get to the point where we are supporting those communities and giving those people things to do that aren't crime, where we are supporting their hierarchy of needs to where they are not turning to criminal activity to fulfill them.
It's a good, solid point, man. And, honestly, let's say that.
Wait, I have to answer Mimi, because I saw your comment in a different conversation earlier. And the way that your city got defunded, where that funding isn't going into the community, that is 100% wrong on all sides.
Agreed. I know what you're talking about. Mimi, so this is a perfect example of when defunding goes wrong, right? So Mimi's department, I think she said $750,000 or something was pulled out of their budget. So normally what would we think that would go to? Well, if we're listening to the The more intellectual parts of the defund movement, they say this needs to go into community centers, this needs to go into treatment centers, this needs to go into things to keep people occupied off the streets, doing something productive and getting the help they need. That's not where that funding went. So literally, we took the funds to try to refund the community and we never put it back into the community. So basically what just happened was both the police and the community got ripped off for about to the tune of 750 G's, 770 G's. And so like when we look at that, no wonder I'm against that kind of defunding, 100%. But if you don't want to talk defunding, then you need to talk, let's figure out a way to drum up a large amount of tax revenue that can't be used for these other things, that's specifically designed for that community infrastructure, for that social interaction and everything else. Because we see it. If you don't have community centers, if you don't have something for youth to do, you have a higher crime rate, period. I grew up in a little town called Horseshoe Bend, Idaho. We didn't have nothing to do with the river, okay? We got in a lot of trouble. We did a lot of drugs. We did a lot of bad things. We trespassed. We broke into stuff and everything else, mainly because we were just chronically bored, man. We didn't have anywhere to put this stuff. There was nothing in our town. So that's where it comes back, where we're like, look, man, you have to create this situation where you're giving back to all sides of this. You can't just constantly feed it into the police force, and expect to somehow get less criminals. You'll get more convictions.
Can I answer 2 comments real quick?
Sure.
So first of all, Chris, no, not minority report type stuff. I'm talking about preventing crime is in the aspect of preventing individuals from seeking crime as an answer to their problems. You fix some of their problems, give them the ability to fix some of their problems, and crime is less likely. Now, in responding to Chuck, I would agree with you completely that, you know, you can't take away money from police and expect them to get more training and better body cams. But you have to look at the statistics that the most well-funded police departments, that's not where their money goes. And a lot of the body cams and stuff like that are actually coming from grants and this and that. Most of police money, about 95% of it, goes purely into payroll. If we give them more money, it does not go to training. What it goes to is hiring more officers with the same level of training. And that's what we've been seeing for 20 years. And that's what leads to us saying they need more training.
An higher pay bracket doesn't make you a better cop. It makes you a more rewarded one.
I know how we fix this this vicious cycle where we get the money from. Federally legalized cannabis.
I like that. Let's call it Popo brand. And we'll just throw it into the federal stores and we will just take that.
Let's call it cannabis for cops.
Yeah.
How many people in the comment section would wear a shirt or donate to a cause or be good with their taxpayer dollars going to something called Cannabis for Cops?
I would.
If I was anti-police, I would donate to Cannabis for Cops just because it's Cannabis for Cops.
Just by the principality of it.
Right?
General purpose means you have to buy that shirt. You see that? You're like, you know what? We got to pull out a second mortgage.
Are you anti-police? No? Buy some weed.
Oh, yeah. But for real though, really though, look, seriously, marijuana makes so much money because when it's legal, this is one of the first things that I saw when I walked into my first dispensary.
Now imagine you're pooping on a spleefer, right? And he looks over at you and he goes, "Thank you."
Thank you. You know what? Be along. Just thank you. Thank you for the paycheck. But
Farmer Claire is on and she is mad. Hey, Farmer Claire, don't be mad at us. We're talking about marijuana. I love you.
But seriously though, no, really though, like when I went into my first dispensary, I expected being somebody. I expected to see like my boys, you know what I mean? People from the hood, you know what I mean? Because that's what I've always been around. I walk in there, homeboy gets out of a Mercedes S-Class with a 3-piece suit on and comes out with a bag bigger than my face. You know what I mean? Like, then you got the sweetest, oldest people buying marijuana, bro. Like, it's really, really a lot of money involved. And yes,
All right, we can't go into that. This is not legalize it. The Reflection 420 episode.
It'll come.
Anyways, it might be on the schedule later. But we really got to wrap up. We're past our time. I want to take some time to thank Patrick Wickard. Patrick Wickard, in case you've been living under a rock, has created this thing called Breathe America, and it is an amazing Facebook group, page, and business / movement in the works to try to heal the divide that we have in America and try to get people to sit down at the table and discuss things much like we have done here. And it doesn't matter what your ideologies or anything else. You can actually check out his page. It's Breathe-America. Put that in the Facebook search engine. We'll pop that up. Make sure you like that. And then make sure you also look up the Breathe America group and ask to be invited. And we will actually bring you in there. That's where the discussions actually happen. Patrick, you also have a show called Live with Breathe America, which you have a very talented producer. Can you tell us about what tomorrow's show is going to be? Because I understand you're having a very special show tomorrow. Is that correct?
Yeah, we've lined up a couple of guests that I think everybody will be excited to see, since like we talked about earlier this week, John and I are heading back to Portland. I believe Beats is coming with us. We're going to check out the this Proud Boy thing that's come up about in response to all the protests and things like that, and we've started digging into that. So for tomorrow's show, we're actually bringing on Villain Phoenix with the Villain Report, as well as the Black Conservative Preacher, who is they are both predominantly in Portland. And they are both going to be on tomorrow to discuss all things Portland. Both of these men have covered the protests, the riots, and all of the above in Portland since the beginning. And they're both going to be at this event as well. So we're all going to be down there together at some point. So this will be an interesting collaboration between some pretty, in some ways, like-minded, in some ways not so much people. So it'll be a fun experience.
I see that we have your version of Siri, which is Hey Kristen, in the comments. Hey Kristen, can we pull up the Facebook links for the Villain Report and the Black Conservative Preacher and put those in the comment section so people can check that out and know who we're talking about? Get over there, show them some love, guys. Tell them that you're looking forward to seeing them on Breathe America. We really want to make sure that we make them feel as welcome as possible, because they didn't have to come on that show. Look at me. I'm producing. I'm literally producing for Live with Breathe America on the Reflection, my show. Jesus, I'm programmed. Mike is the founder of all my good ideas, which I pass off as my own. Mike, last words, buddy.
Come join the family over at Breathe America. We have a lot of good talks. We have, several different groups. We're getting more going, aside from the main group where we talk about a lot of difficult issues like this. We also have, the book club. We have a men's group, a women's group, an LGBTQ group. We're working on a spiritual wellness and health group, and we're working on a hobby group. But yeah, we have multiple podcasts, multiple groups. Come join us. If this is the first time you're seeing anything about us, come join us.
Absolutely, 100%. Come join us. Sorry about that. Something knocked over. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're going to pop these guys off, Mike and Patrick, and we're going to do our little wrap up here. Thank you guys for joining us tonight and
Thank
being
you.
the
pleasure.
great guest that you always are, man. I really appreciate it. And remember to breathe, America. Remember to be better than you are, or better than you were yesterday than you are today. Wait, what? I don't get that. You got to sing it
Be a
from us.
little better
Give us
tomorrow than you were today. It's nighttime. So you gotta
Perfect.
say it
Be a little
that
bit
way.
better tomorrow. Yeah. We have a similar thing here at the Reflection. It's called "No, You're Wrong Because," but that's our slogan.
What? Since when? Our slogan is hashtag we are the change.
Oh no.
No, you're wrong
Anyways.
because he just changed it.
No kidding. All right, guys. We'll talk to you a little bit later. Oh,
Good show,
geez.
buddy. Good show.
I don't know that it was. I know that we had some great guests and they said a lot of intelligent stuff. I'm not sure that we did very well. We're kind of low energy tonight. This is kind of like a low energy thing.
Bro.
I feel
Yeah.
like I'm overwhelmed by a lot of the things that are going on right now, like protesting, the rioting. We're looking at the Louisville thing. Like, there's just a lot of stress going on right now. So it's hard to find the jokes as often when you're dealing with something it's kind of tragic.
Yeah, I agree. I have to say, Breathe America is a real big catalyst to starting off this show here, The Reflection. This is more my cup of tea, and we're in our third show, and I think we're just gonna hit the ground running here, especially once we get to Portland this weekend. I'm really excited for that. This is kind of one of those opportunities that I asked for, with being able to talk to somebody who had completely different ideas than I do. So
and not
I'm
hating
excited.
each other afterwards.
Yeah,
Not
I'm
hating each
excited.
other.
That's my goal. My goal from this weekend is to befriend a Proud Boy, legitimately befriend a Proud Boy. And then I'm going to turn him into you, John.
What?
And then I'm going to turn him into you.
It's tough to get to the position where I'm at. Not too many conservatives can argue for liberal causes. Not too many conservatives believe that most modern politicians that call themselves conservatives are actually not conservatives.
Right.
But, I hope you don't screw them up that badly. That's all I can say.
Nah. See, you know what, John? You know me in a different light. Okay, you're getting ready to see the politically correct, anatomically correct. Yeah, I just said that.
Anatomically correct?
Yeah, I did.
Well, I will say this. We're going to Live with Breathe America is going to go live several times during this. We're going to give you all the information we can, but we're also going to have Aaron with us. We're going to go at least one time live from the Reflection page to talk a little bit about this. We'll have to squeeze it in because, how we are at Breathe America, man. We want to get every second. So, we really.
How many cameras we'll have on deck? 4?
See,
to be able to look around.
Something like that.
I'm bringing some walkies, bro. Got some walkies, so I'm gonna hit.
Wait, you can't have walkie-talkies because then people will think we're organized.
That's stupid.
That's a joke for a special little someone.
Oh,
anyway,
okay.
So, yeah. Thank you for joining us, guys. We're going to call it a night. We love you.
Oh, wait. Thank you, Adam. We didn't think
Adam. Get up here and give us your final thoughts, buddy. Front and center.
Here, switch the seats.
Get in the Beats chair.
Final thoughts. I thought it was a good show, and one of my favorite quotes is, "Day by day, in every way, we are getting better and better." That is by Emile Coup, a Frenchman, and I try to live up to that as much as I can. And so that's how I feel about Breathe America, and that's how I feel about this show. And I like that everybody's got their opinions and everybody tries to respect each other's opinions, and we like to have a nice friendly conversation about it.
Even if it is because you have to tolerate Aaron dancing in the background and me never shutting up.
Yeah, it can be hard to get a word in edgewise, but I'm glad you guys let us ramble some tonight.
Aaron's working on this buzzer system that will actually send electrical shocks to us when we start talking too long. I think once we get the technology on that, the show's going to just infinitely take off. We'll probably be on CNN after that. You know, we're going to be main network.
What?
All right.
You can't prove you didn't say that because you don't own a body cam.
Oh, savage! On that note, ladies and gentlemen, have a good night. See you in Portland. Tomorrow, check out Patrick's show. I forgot the name. Live with Breathe
Oh, and it's going to be, by the way, it's going to be 5 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. Breathe America, Live with Breathe America is going to be, or I believe that is. Hold on a second. I think Patrick's still backstage. I'm going to rip him out. Patrick, put your clothes back on, buddy. What time is Live with Breathe America tomorrow?
I can't hear you.
What time is Live with Breathe America tomorrow? He can't hear us. We'll post
Make sure
it.
we get an advertisement out. We think it's like 5, 6 o'clock, somewhere around that
Stand
time.
by to stand by.
Stand by to stand by. That's a good one. Good night, fellas and ladies.
Good night. We love you. Have a good one.
Everybody.